Cargill last year, we had revenue about $130 billion with about 70 business units. So as you can imagine, when you talk about 70 business units that cut across 65 countries, it's actually pretty impossible, right, to set a so-called corporate strategy that will guide the direction as well as the specific strategic plans for each of the regions as well as business units, right? So when we talk about corporate strategy, and at least in Cargill's term, it's less of strategy in the traditional sense of where do you play and how do you play and what's your core competency. But it's actually more of setting, I'll say, a set of guardrails, right, of how do we actually govern this organization that sets some sort of limits so people know exactly where to play, okay? But leaving enough of the entrepreneurial aspects of running the business, setting the specific strategies to individual business to do. Okay, so what do I mean by guardrails? So Cargill is a place that's governed very strongly by a set of guiding principles, right? So very strong business ethics. I will say that's number one. Again, typically for people who are trained in strategy, we don't typically think of that as a strategy, but it absolutely is the guiding lighthouse, if you will, right? That guides how Cargill functions, right? Cargill also has what they call the strategic intent. Okay, that's being developed about, I think the last one was refreshed, I think about 7 years ago, right? And this is probably it comes closest to what we typically think of a corporate strategy. Okay, the strategic intent is a set of intentions that basically states that our aspiration, right? Our inspiration is to be the partner of choice for our customers, for our employees, right? And for the communities that we work in. We want to have imaginary people, right, who can deliver on the strategic intent, right? And we'll leverage innovation, right, as part of it. So as you can imagine, that statement is very broad, in some ways somewhat vague, right? But it actually serves as a galvanizing force that basically pull everybody together and say, okay, what we're trying to do, or whatever strategy we do develop has to meet, right, the strategic intent of serving our customers and be the partner of choice, right, in every location, in every business we're in. We have to look at it from a portfolio approach and ask ourselves, how do we want this portfolio in its entirety shape up, right? Rather than going into individual businesses. So ultimately, the goal is to be able to step back and say, okay, looking at these 70 business units, what's the health of the portfolio? And therefore, what's the performance of the portfolio? Are there adjustments that we need to make at any given point of time, right? But setting the overall guidance for what the portfolio need to look like and shape like is what we do, right? You could call it corporate strategy, but I would think that this is more around portfolio management in terms of really thinking about resource allocation, right? In terms of placing your bets short-term versus long-term. In terms of also just thinking about the size and the shape of the portfolio at any given time. And this is very organic, as you can imagine, it moves right, back and forth. So that's the corporate level work that we do. Now, for a lot of the BU level work, the strategy work in some ways is very similar to what a first-year consulting firm would do, right? A lot of it is about business growth strategy. It is about setting directions. Sometimes it's about turnaround, right? Sometimes it's about how do we bring strategy in to combine with the operation aspects of the business, right? So I think for those, I think I call those work, this classical strategy work. In some ways it's not very different, right, from business to business. I think the key element here is we always work very closely with the businesses to make sure that the specific industry expertise is brought in, right? Because as you can imagine, managing a beef business, right? So Cargill is one of the largest beef manufacturers. A lot of people don't know that, but beef producers, I should say, in the US, right? So doing a beef-related strategy is very different from, for example, how do we think about grain trading in China, right? So the industry insights and expertise, we rely heavily on the businesses, right? People who have the experience and expertise. What we bring in is the methodology, the tools, the analytics, right, as well as the way of organizing thinking to help them sort through whatever strategy they need to do. Sitting in Minnesota, right? Actually, it's in a suburb of Minneapolis. The headquarters is in Wayzata, Minnesota. We can't possibly know not only the regulatory and the business environment in every single location, but we also, there's no way for us to know what are the operational challenges that's currently facing there, how the employees are thinking about it, right? So we are very conscious of what kind of decisions we make and we don't make out of the headquarters, right? I think the communications and the decisions that will come out of the headquarters probably only fall under a few different categories. First and foremost is about just being the cultural stewardess of the organization, right? So guiding principles is very important in Cargill. It is all about we must obey the law, right? It is about we must think about our customers first, right? It is about we must be in an environment where we are there to enrich the community and employees, right? Those things don't change no matter where you are, right? So being the stewardess of that guiding principle is I will say paramount, right? Especially sitting in the headquarters. And I'll say the second and third probably are around, especially in terms of setting the financial goals and financial targets, right? Ultimately, what a headquarters function is, especially in the context of Cargill, is resource allocation, right? Resource allocation in terms of financial resources, in terms of best talent, right? Where do you put people? Where do you put money, right? And that becomes the most important decision, okay? So the way to make those decisions is obviously sitting at headquarters, you do need to have the information bubbled up to know where are the biggest opportunities, right? And where are the biggest challenges, right? So we make those kind of decisions at headquarter level, right? And the third is continue to provide directions to galvanize the employees, right? So, our chairman and CEO, Greg Page, regularly does, webcast, right, with employees to share about financial results, share about sort of high-level directions in terms of where the company is going, sharing shareholder expectations, right? So it's communication, it's a help to basically pull the organization together, right? More so than making very specific decisions of you shall or you shall not do this.